Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and this is the show where I review all the comics I've read this week in one show. We go least favorite to best pick of the week and everything in between. And before I get started, I do have a Kickstarter going on right now for the Dancer. She's a dancer slash assassin, and when she was little, she witnessed her parents being murdered in front of her and never dealt with that trauma until now. It's kind of like if Batman dealt with his trauma. This is the last issue, so you can collect the whole entire series from beginning, middle, and end, and check that one out. Now, also, of course, we do the viewer's pick of the week at the end of the video, so in the comments below, let me know your pick of the week for a chance to be featured in the next episode. Now, jumping into this week's books, there's a lot of issue ones. I actually had a pretty average-sized haul with 12 comics, and number 12 for me is Batman Superman World's Finest issue 19, a book I really enjoyed from the beginning, but I feel like has lost some steam in these previous arcs, especially as that initial arc with the boy that is very similar to Superman has not been as much of a plot device in this book. You know, we definitely still deal with the nostalgia of Batman and Superman. This really references their first adventure, and you get to see that. But honestly, I forgot that last issue completely, and I jumped into this. I'm like, wait, what happened again? Where are we? And I just couldn't get into this arc. I'm going to give the next arc a chance, but if it doesn't catch fire like those previous ones did, I might drop this book. So giving that 2 stars, and that is number 12. Moving on to number 11, end of a miniseries, and that is Cult of Carnage Misery, issue 5. I like this issue. I just feel like it tried to fit a little bit too much, where we get to see Liz deal with her trauma of being harmed by Harry. We get to see his ex-girlfriend, who's the mother of his child. Spider-Man's in here for some reason, and they really try to tie a lot of loose ends, and it just wasn't enough room. And I wanted to see more of what we saw in that previous issue, more of Liz's emotions. I want to see more Misery and her relationship with the symbiote, which I don't feel like this book has enough time to do. Like I said, it just felt very cluttered. The artwork is okay for this book, and I just don't think it really stuck the landing. So overall, giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 11. Moving on to number 10, and that is Catwoman issue 57. This is part 2 or 3 of the Gotham Wars, part 3 because they include the prelude. And, you know, I like the artwork for this one. This is why it was a little higher than Misery. I think it was a stronger art style. But I feel like this book has a ton of potential, right? It's Batman versus his Bat family. But he's just kind of whiny in this issue. And it just feels like a book it's spinning its wheels. It doesn't really feel like it's actually saying anything, even though there's really strong premise behind it. This just doesn't move very much. If you like Red Hood, you might like this issue. It's a little bit more focused on him and his relationship with Batman, but it didn't really do it for me. So overall, giving that 2.5 stars, and then is number 10. All right, moving on to number 9, which is a new book, one of those issue ones, and that is Captain America issue 1. Wanted to try this because JMS was joining the team. I really like the artist for this book as well. It's the same artist that did one of the parts of the previous Punisher book. So I was pretty interested to see where this was going to go. I liked the last Captain America volume enough to finish it. And I was like, oh, I never really liked Captain America. I want to see if this next volume will also get me into the character. And I feel like this is more for people who already like Captain America. It goes back to basics of who the character is. You get to dig into his past. It's mostly what this issue is about. But as someone who doesn't really care about the character, I don't think it did anything really new or anything too exciting. And, you know, there's some good dialogue here and there, but overall, it's kind of a forgettable issue. So giving that 3 stars, and that is number 9. All right, moving on to number 8, which is Titans, issue 3. A book that I feel like every issue I'm getting some completely different story. This one we're focusing more on Trigon, Brother Blood, and him teaming up with Aqualad. And you're like, okay, so that's what Aqualad's been up to. The team kind of gives up on Aqualad pretty quickly. He's like, okay, do what you want. You know, I like seeing the team work together. I like this promise that Wally might die, and you're like, okay, what's going to happen there? But like I said, every issue just kind of feels different in not a strong way. It just doesn't feel like it has a direction, and I want to like this series more than I do. I love the art. I think Nicola Scott does a really wonderful job, but it just feels very unfocused right now. So overall, giving that 3 stars. Still want to see where it goes, especially because there's another big event happening with the Titans, but I don't know how long I'll be sticking around with this one. All right, moving on to number 7, which is Saga issue 66. This focused more on the secondary characters, which is not always my favorite side of Saga. I really do like the core more. I enjoy the main characters. I think there's a good opener with the villain-ish character where we get to see his relationship with Alana and what that looked like previously and how he kind of became a jerk. And we get to see him fight against Alana's old friends, and that's kind of the issue. Not much happens in it. There's good art. Again, I thought the opener was good enough to have a fun read, but it's not one of my favorite issues. So giving that 3 stars, and that is number 7. Moving on to number 6, which is Nightwing issue 106. And I like the direction of this book. I'm not a huge fan of Rick. Was anyone really a big fan of Rick, who is the Nightwing character who got shot in the head? He obviously was Nightwing, but he didn't remember he was Nightwing, and he started his own life. And this is a reference to that. But I actually like that it was a different side of Nightwing, where we're getting to see a completely different story where those days are referenced, and his old girlfriend is a pirate. So we'll see where that goes. But I thought that was a good cliffhanger. If you liked that era at all or familiar with that era, you might get something out of it. I just like that they're doing something new. I like the art. I also enjoyed getting the backup story with Cassandra and Stephanie and the Batgirls, and I usually don't read the backup stories, so it was nice to have something to make this book worth $5.99, because that's a lot. I did get a variant cover, so I think if you got the regular cover, it's $4.99, but that's still pretty pricey. All right, moving on to the top 5. This is honestly a really tight top 5. I really enjoyed all these almost equally, so this is gonna be a fun rundown. But let's start talking about the topic of this video, which is Wonder Woman issue 1, which is my number 5, which I gave a solid 4. So the answer to the quick question, was it worth the hype? Yeah, honestly it was. As someone who doesn't normally read Wonder Woman, and honestly I haven't read a Tom King book in a little while, it was nice to see something different from Tom King, and it was nice to see something different from Wonder Woman. We get to see a lot of the themes that have already been caked into Wonder Woman explored here. The idea of this Paradise Island being all woman. How would men relate to that? How does America relate to that? And the answer is there's an all-out war because of it, and the Amazons are being targeted, some die, and then you get to see why Wonder Woman's such a special hero. And I think Tom King does a really good job through monologue discussing like why she's different from Batman and Superman, and why her fighting style is really different. It makes you think for sure about that as well. So overall, and also the ending I thought was a really interesting reverse of the themes of Wonder Woman, where we get to see a guy who's like this king who has the lasso of lies. So I was like, okay, that's kind of fun. I think there's a lot here to really build some interesting story arcs. I will say there's times where the dialogue was a little bit too heavy, where I was like, okay, I kind of want to see where the point's going. And I don't know how to feel about that middle scene with, I'm guessing, 2 Amazons. There's one Amazon and then another person is dressed in civvies, and they seem married. They seem like they're a couple, and one of them dies, and it's just like, okay, you don't really get to see queer characters that often at DC Comics. Wonder Woman sometimes, but I don't love to have the bury your gaze just for the sake of killing somebody off, and not really having a story connected to killing them off. Maybe there will be in issues to come, but I thought it was a cheap shot for the middle. But I do think I want to see where that goes, and obviously they're trying to heighten, look, this is a threat, and there's gonna be a war. So overall, I'll give this 4 stars. I am very curious to see where it goes. I think it's very different for Wonder Woman, and I thought it was in Tom King's wheelhouse of political thriller, but it felt different than the other political thrillers he has written in the past. So giving that 4 stars, and the artwork is out of this world for this book. So pick it up. I think it's worth the hype, and I think it's something a little bit different. Going on to number 4. A book I was also really pleasantly surprised by, and that's Uncanny Spider-Man issue 1. I didn't know what to expect with this book. I don't think anyone did. It's like, okay, why is Nightcrawler Spider-Man? It's honestly more conceivable that like a Human Torch would be Spider-Man, someone who's really close to him. I never think of Nightcrawler, and I hope I didn't say Nightwing before. If I did, Nightcrawler. I never thought of Nightcrawler as BFFs with Spider-Man, but I think it does a pretty good job at describing why he's doing it, and I like that it was very distant from the X-Men books, because I've been kind of tired of the Krakoa stuff, so it felt nice where he's like, no, I want to almost leave that all behind and just try to be a good person, which is really in the root of Nightwing. And you do have some mutant stories of like, okay, here's, there's characters who want to kill him off because he's a mutant. But there's also some Spider-Man stuff as well. You get to see Vulture in this issue. So I think it meshes the genres in a really weird but interesting way. I think the creators get Nightcrawler correct, and this is the previous writer who wrote Nightcrawler, so that makes sense. And it's just weird and interesting. I like that it's something really different, and I want to see where this goes. I had a fun time with it. So, and also the artwork is really solid for this book too. Lee Garbett is a wonderful artist, and glad to see him doing some mainstream books. So giving that 4 stars, and that is number 4. Moving on to number 3, an arc I've been really enjoying from Spider-Man, and that is the Amazing Spider-Man issue 34, continuing this almost October Halloween-esque horror story where Spider-Man becomes like Green Goblin, also like Kraven, hunts his prey and wants to murder everyone really gruesomely, everyone he loves and people he hates, like Dr. Octopus or Venom, but also Mary Jane and Paul. So, or at least Paul. More Paul than Mary Jane. He's like, yeah, I want to see Mary Jane use her jackpot powers to try to save Paul, but he's gonna die anyways. So, there's a lot of fun aspects of that. Yes, there's some moments that still feel repetitive, but I think it works with the horror creepiness, almost Halloween slasher-esque feel to this book. And also it's obviously very reminiscent to Kraven the Last Hunt. I just feel like this arc really works, and I've been really enjoying it. I'm curious to see where it goes. Does this mean Green Goblin's gonna become Green Goblin again? Norman becomes Green Goblin? I don't know, but I really like his character in this one. I love the art, and I want to see more arcs like this with Spider-Man. It feels like its own thing, but it also feels like it's progressing the characters, and that's all you could really ask for with a superhero book. So giving that 4 stars, and that is number 3. Moving on to number 2, which is Klik, Klik, Boom, issue 4. I love this book. I think the artwork is so unique, where we get to see the action scenes have to do with the photographs that our main character takes, but also just seeing the relationship of this journalist, the babbling journalist, and the quiet assassin, just having their relationship grow and get to see how they become friends and maybe even family. And I really enjoy that aspect. There's some good progression in this one. You learn a little bit about our assassin's past. You see even our journalist grow as a character and want to be more courageous. And I liked it. I thought it was a really solid issue with some really great action. So giving that 4 stars, and that is number 2. Moving on to number 1, again, this was hard. I really liked all 5 of these issues, almost the same. But Superman issue 6 for me. And the reason why this pulled to the front was, I liked the artwork a lot. I loved seeing Gleb work with Williamson again after Robin. It really brought a cool all-star Superman look to it. So I felt like, all right, that was very unique. And also just the way this book feels like a television show, that every issue you're just kind of hanging out with your friends again, and you get to see, all right, what's Lois up to? What's Superman up to? Oh, where's the plot going? And I think it moves really well for the amount of pages it has. And I like how everything feels very familiar, but it also feels like it's reinventing the wheel all at the same time. Like Supercorp is a really interesting concept, where Superman's obviously the head of this Lex Luthor Corps, and they have a new villain. I also love how this book introduces new villains. It's so organic and doesn't feel like, oh, here's a spec book. It's like, no, these villains are necessary for the story. And we get to see that here with this prison villain who's almost Superman-esque and almost looks like an old school Lex Luthor with the red hair. And he's let go because of Superman, and Lex is like, oh no, I'm about to die, but Superman kind of screwed up here. And it's what I like about the reinvention of the wheel here. It's its own Phantom Zone, but with the combination of Lex and Superman. I just really love the mythology that this book's building. I like the character work. I love the whole Metropolis Smallville interaction that Lois and Clark have here. It's just a really, really solid book that's all about interpersonal relationships while still building mythology. And that's all I could really ask for with a superhero book is, and like I said, even with the Spider-Man book, it's like, give me a good story I haven't seen before, even if it's familiar to something I've seen before. Progress your characters and give me something new. And I think both Superman and Spider-Man in this arc has done that. So giving that 4 stars. That's my pick of the week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno. Let me know in the comments below what was your pick of the week. And last week's viewer pick of the week was Batman Gargoyles of Gotham. And here are some comments about that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.